Welcome everyone. Today, a very special episode of the Talking with series. This is a series when I talk with people from the tech world, software developers, YouTubers, CEOs of great companies, and of course, Docker. We can't hide the fact that Docker is one of my favorite companies. This way before starting on social media, way before starting YouTube. But today, basically, my dream is coming true because today I'm interviewing the CEO of Docker himself. Scott, welcome, and how are you?
Hey, Francesco. Thanks so much for the invitation. This is my dream come true, being interviewed by you and on your YouTube channel. So thank you.
Yes. Now, jokes aside, we will show some Docker swag during the whole interview, but we can start from the hoodie, the usual stuff.
Yeah.
Perfect. And yes, Scott, we met in December 2021. Thank you so much. Still owe you a pizza and a beer, and I'll fulfill my debt in the
I'm sure it
future.
wasn't nearly as good as Italian pizza, but thank you. Thank you. Palo Alto pizza.
Nice. Yes, so yes, we are product and also a DevOps enthusiast. So, Scott, in this episode, I would like to talk about you, your past. How did you step into tech? Then Docker community. DevOps. So we will talk for a while. Feel free, of course, to drop your questions in the comments so we can also make this more interactive. So, Scott, I'm excited. Let's get started. So please tell me something about yourself. So first of all, introduce yourself, and then we can move
Sure.
from there.
Sure. Scott, the lead deckhand here at Docker. I've been with Docker 9 years today, Francesco. So today is my 9th year anniversary with Docker. And it's been quite a journey, and the community has been a big part of that journey. And so I'm glad we're here talking about the community because it is one of the most important ways in which people experience Docker, and it's often the first way in which they experience Docker. I've been in tech decades at this point. Love the industry, love everything about it, love the rate of change, love the rate of learning. And then on the personal side, have a family, 3 fantastic kids, fantastic wife, and we live in Northern California. So that's a little bit about me to start.
Nice, amazing. So we got the anniversary today of your job, and yes, so I can say that also from the personal point of view, like when we met. Scott is super friendly. We say like a handy person. We say this like in Italy, so it's like a person who you can talk to. Like it's like one of us, so we can say. So yes, so we have Produm. Of course, we can start making some fun words. Of course, this is one. And also, Scott, I am a runner, so usually I make like a Docker run when I go to run with a Docker t-shirt.
Right.
It's a good pull. It's good fun.
That's right.
Nice. Okay, perfect. So, Scott, I would like to ask you more about yourself. How did you step into tech? Little to understand a bit more about your journey, and then we step into Docker. We have all day free, right?
Yeah. I don't know if we have all day, but we have some time. So not to date myself, but when I was a kid, my dad, who was in banking, would take me to the bank once a year, and the highlight of that bank tour was seeing the mainframe room. So this is in the 70s, okay? So in the 70s, the computers in the bank were a mainframe, and they were on a dedicated floor behind big glass walls. So of course I wasn't allowed inside, right? Because only the specialists were inside. And I just remember as a kid just being fascinated by these big, powerful machines behind these glass walls. And then 1977 hits, and I read about this little company in California called Apple Computer, and the idea of democratizing that powerful tech, right? That it was no longer behind the glass wall for specialists, but it was available to millions of others. It caught my imagination, and I just was excited by that potential. We didn't have a computer at home yet, and I couldn't get into the computer class at school. Had just started, Apple IIs, but we had a neighbor who had a Radio Shack TRS-80. And so I would hang around his yard doing odd jobs, even babysitting, so I could get time on his computer. And I taught myself to program in BASIC back then on the TRS-80. And so that's how I got started. And from there, we eventually got an IBM PC and did additional BASIC on that. Worked for Sun Microsystems as a developer out of school. Worked in Japan for a Japanese company as a software developer out of school. Saw the first web browser in 1993 in Japan, which caught my imagination about what was happening with the internet and the web. And just that's followed me through my career. Just the fascination with the more you can democratize and make accessible, powerful tech, the more you can unleash creativity of so many people. And bringing it all the way to Docker today, Docker really simplifies difficult distributed computing concepts to make it accessible and easy for others to have huge impact on the applications that they develop. And we can talk more about Docker, but briefly, Francesco, that's how I got into the industry, and it's been the driver ever since. This notion of democratizing powerful tech and making it accessible to as many people as possible.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So this has been fascinating for me because it's also for me, like I think I started with a Commodore 64 and then other stuff. And now we are here, so busy. So yeah, I'm also planning, for example, a presentation about like the history like of programming, because we have like, I think this year it will be 75 years from the first software, you can say. It was I think 48. So we are getting to a stage that I don't know, at some point we'll have programming in the history books, like to understand the evolution of the software itself, and how people like changed the way to develop software. Because before we were like just programmers, let's say, just people writing code. And I think, and now for let's see, for the young people thinking like that you have to program without the internet or on books, it sounds weird, totally weird. Like, I have to say, but this is like, it was a phase, you could say, of this.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I say it, and what's exciting though is I think there's still so much to do, Francesco, right? Like we're just getting started, even though it's been 75 years since the first software. Like a fascinating stat I heard on this recently is the next couple of years there will be more than 750 million applications built in the next couple of years. That 750 million applications, that is more than have been built in the entire 75 history of IT. Meaning there's more and more demand for apps. There's more and more developers. The tooling is getting better and better. And the industry is just continuing to accelerate and grow. And for me, that means like there's no better time to be in the industry than right now, and get involved and roll up your sleeves and learn to program, learn to build applications, because it's still early. It's still early. That's my point of view.
Yes, I like to make the analogy with like the building systems. Like, I'm from Rome, so like, the Romanian, they were used to build stuff in some ways. So the history of building like the buildings, but this has been going for millennials, let's say, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, but for sure thousands of years. In development is happening the same, but like in years. So it's like in three years. Every 5 years there is a huge change. Which is less than a lifetime of a person. So this is like, like the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, but this was like a slow change. Instead of development, like if you have if you're not like super fresh, you remember like eras of development. We can define them like eras, like how we develop software now. Today, it's totally different of what was 20 years ago, but it's the same person, like coding, maybe coding 20 years ago. So there is also this needing of evolution as a developer. So this is important. So,
I agree, and it's the same person, yet look how much more power that person has, right? So now you're right. Like 30, 40 years ago, you had to buy a computer, rack a server, right? Put in a data center, right? And now a developer with a credit card can provision instances in the cloud at hundreds of instances, right? So the power of developer has just accelerated in the last decade, making so much power so accessible, and just the swipe of a credit card, self-service and go, right? And so you're right, it's the same individual, but I'd say that individual, the lever that individual has to Archimedes, or go back to the ancient time references. The lever that developers have today is just so fantastic and so much more significant than it used to be.
Nice. I'm getting emotional at this point. So, so Scott, let's okay. So
Okay.
let's go back. Let's go back on the main topic. So I would like to. Okay, so the Docker has been invented as created in 2013. I
March
think so.
March
So
2013. Yeah.
okay, so we will celebrate 10 years this year, right?
That's right.
We need another cake probably.
And we're just getting started. First 10 years of container and tech, and look, I see comments in the comment field. You know, Docker, and then Kubernetes, and and CNCF. Like, it's been such a Cambrian explosion of innovation in those 10 years, and we're just getting started.
Yeah. Yes. So, Scott, let's talk about probably our favorite topic, which is Docker. So the company, the idea. I know some story of Docker, the story behind that. But maybe I would like to give you the honor to understand maybe how did Docker started and how the community of Docker was born. We can say.
Sure. So I joined February, as I said, today marks my 9 years. So I joined February 2014, which was almost a year after Docker was open sourced, right? So Solomon, the founder of Docker, open sourced Docker March 2013 at PyCon, and it took off right away. I became aware of it that summer of 2013. I was at Puppet at the time, and Puppet and Ansible, Salt, Chef, we were all trying to address similar challenges that Docker was addressing. That is, how do you make the environments between dev and production consistent so there's no more works on my machine type finger pointing? And Docker came on the scene and just simplified that dramatically, because now all the dependencies are inside the container, right? And so all the config management tools, or the automation tools, where we're trying to drive all the configs across laptops and servers, it was not as efficient or as effective as Docker just putting all the configs and all the dependencies inside the container. And so it really took off. I got excited by it, and 6 months after I saw it appear in Puppet's accounts, I joined Docker. So February 2014. So it was Solomon, Ben Gold, who was the CEO at the time, and everyone else was pretty much an open source engineer, trying to figure it out, right? Because it was a year in, like I said, less than a year into the revolution, and we were trying to figure out, like, how do we get the Docker engine itself to 1.0. So it was not yet 1.0 when I joined. We hadn't launched Docker Hub yet, and the notion of, like, let's have trusted content available on Docker Hub to make it easy for users to pull base images, pull databases, and start building applications on top of that. So a lot of the early concepts we were working on as a team in that 2014, 2015 timeframe. And then, of course, once the power of Docker and the proliferation of containers was becoming clear, the need for orchestrators came up, right? And then so you had the launch of Kubernetes, the launch of Docker Swarm, Hashi's Nomad. There was Mesosphere. Like, the launch of orchestrators came really shortly after, because we realized with lots of nodes and hundreds of containers that you needed to automate all that, and orchestration was key to automate that. And so that was really the start. And I want to, because this is a talk about community, really give credit to Solomon, because he had a fantastic instinct, like an innate instinct on the power of community and how to authentically engage them in the development of the product, and to listen to their feedback and include them in the innovation iteration process. And that ethos stuck with the company. Here we are 9 years later. And so the community became not something separate or not something after you did the product, but the community became part of the product development process, which I think to this day is critical to the company. And I think it's one of the reasons the company continues to grow, is that the community is intimately involved in guiding the product direction and guiding the product strategy.
Nice. Thank you so much, Scott. And yes, and I think that the part of the building a community for Docker, it has been one of the key factor that made it explode. And so I'd like to ask you about something more about how it was the community in the very early phases,
Yeah.
in the first year, 2 years,
Yeah.
because usually what happens in the first years, it's very, very important, because now everybody knows Docker. If you don't know Docker, you should. It's your fault, you can say. But like like
No one's fault.
yeah, it's like 8 years ago, you had to actually build that community, and now there's also the amazing project of the ambassador programs of the Docker captains. Super honored. I think one of the best days of my life so far, like becoming a Docker captain. So Scott, something more about the building the community itself from your point of view.
So, going back to 2013, 2014, the community at the time was very small, right? Because Docker wasn't known. It had just been open source. And so the community at that time really it was focused on the contributors to the project, because Docker, open source project. And there was a lot of hardcore Linux technology that was needed to make Docker do the magic that it does. And so most of the community at the time was centered around the project, iterating with Solomon and the engineering team on how to surface features that would be useful for developers and make sure other features were kind of automated or smart defaults. And so another way to say it is like most of the contributors were just hardcore Linux engineers at the time. And so that was a very small group, and they were contributing. And then what we expanded to was, and this will come up, or maybe now is a good way to talk about it, or a good time to talk about it, Francesco, is in retrospect, it's important that your product architecture allows multiple different types of community members and different experience to contribute. Meaning that not everyone can do a pull request for a Linux C group or namespaces like that. It's very hardcore Linux technology. But what we found is with the way in which to describe Docker images in Docker files, to bake a Docker image in Docker file, that was, if you know Docker files, they're very similar to Bash, right? So if you know Bash, you can create an image in a Docker file, and if you can create an image, then you can start sharing that through Docker Hub. And so my point, Francesco, is like that's an easier way to contribute and participate in the community than a pull request for a deep Linux kernel feature that the early Docker engine required. And so we can go through the stack, but there's different parts of the product where community members with different skill sets and different experience can contribute. And so in retrospect to your question, like how were we able to grow? I think enabling a product architecture that allowed contribution from different levels, different members of community. So you've got Docker images shared on Docker Hub. You have Docker Compose, which is shared on GitHub and Awesome Compose. You've got the core technology itself, which again, really hardcore Linux engineers are able to contribute to, and so on and so forth. Like there's all these different ways that people can contribute, that the community can contribute. And as a result, I think you plant the seeds for the community to grow from there, because the community will take that and then take it places where you might not envision. I mean, look, you here have started your own kind of channel on YouTube. We see that pattern a lot in the Docker community. Well, where they realize that the community member knows a lot about Docker. There's a big audience out there that wants to learn about Docker, and they create a YouTube channel, a teaching series on Pluralsight or Udemy. We have Docker captains whose full-time job is education and consulting. They've built their businesses, their livelihood on sharing Docker with others. And I think the product allows for that. And then we'll talk about the social aspect, like the social people aspect has to be there as well, which allows people to ask questions in a safe place, to push on assertions and push on proposals in a way that's respectful and back and forth. I think if you don't have that social aspect coupled with the product architecture that allows contribution, it's hard to get a groundswell community. But I think Docker was fortunate that we had both. We had a product architecture that allowed contributions, and we had an atmosphere socially and with people where there was a safe place to learn and to teach. And those two together really facilitated the growth. I'll pause there, but those are the two aspects I'd point to that over time have really powered the growth.
Nice. Thank you, Scott. And now we can say that you made it like in simple terms, like we have this and that. But of course, putting this in action, it requires like a huge effort from everyone. A huge shout out to everyone who is creating our content, sharing this knowledge.
That's right.
So it's really something that. Let's say all together we can make the difference. It's not like something
That's,
that one person, even if it's super skilled, as I say, but that's not enough. Like even if I know exactly, even if I have a little store, but it's still not enough to create something meaningful, because we need, as you said, to increase awareness, welcome new people. For example,
that's right.
Toby Lopez asking here if the how welcoming is the Docker community, and he also, for example, he started using, is a young and very talented guy, and he recently started DevOps, and he thinks that Docker is the go-to nowadays, and this is of course my thoughts too. So yes, so about the welcoming part, what do you think is like something that makes like the a community successful and also meaningful, let's say, for especially I think for the new ones, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And actually, let me take this moment just to, I'll come back to it, Francesco, but and you went there, is that you've graciously invited me to come talk, but exactly to your point, the community is successful. I mean, I'm here chatting with you, but like we have fantastic Docker captains, over 60 some Docker captains that are out there that are really the leaders in our community. We have hundreds of Docker community leaders that are putting together meetups around the world, and excited to bring speakers and content and T-shirts, of course, right? Like, and so that group of leaders inside the community is a fantastic way to get introduced to the community and learn about what's going on, and understand kind of what's available. And I want to make sure that the Docker team that's responsible for curating this is also given recognition. So Docker's DevRel community team is Keenan, Erwin, Eva, Ajit, Alba, Aurelian, like they do fantastic work to support the community and support the captains and support the community leaders. And so it does take intentionality and deliberateness to foster the good things that are going on. And the folks that I just mentioned are invaluable, and the Docker community wouldn't exist without them. So I want to recognize that for sure. The welcoming part is a really interesting thread, and maybe another way to get into this, Francesco, is that like the community is a reflection of the sponsoring company organization. Meaning, if your company culture is one thing, your community culture is very unlikely to be a different culture, right? Because a community is a reflection of the people in the company who are sponsoring and supporting and nurturing the community. And so one of our company virtues is humility, and another one is open collaboration. And what those mean, how they manifest themselves, and you'll see this, how this supports a welcoming community. The humility, one of the manifestations is a growth mindset, right? There's always something to learn. There's always something to teach, and that others, whether inside the company, outside the company, regardless of tenure, regardless of title, have things to contribute, ideas to contribute, have feedback, right? That's worth listening to and considering. And then you couple that with the open collaboration. This is about kind of sharing information, keeping barriers as close to zero as possible, because the more information that's out there, more context out there, the more resources community members have, internal employees have to do their jobs, right? And then to succeed and really achieve what they want to achieve in their careers and in their life. And so that foundation, I think, of the company culture makes it authentic to kind of bring that to the community through the DevRel team, through the Docker captains, and through the meetups. And as a result, I think that's why you do see a welcoming community. When new people come to the community, they can ask questions, they can ask basic questions, and they're not berated and they're not put down. They're actually welcomed into, like, oh, well, here's some resources and let me walk you through this, and you can talk to this person. They're really smart on that topic that you're looking into. And what I've also seen, Francesco, and this is again to the credit of the community, I know there's many community members here on the stream, is that once you get those behaviors and those social norms established by the community, then they're self-reinforcing, right? So if someone with a negative attitude or someone who treats people badly shows up, the community will reject that person, right? And they'll learn that person will learn very quickly, like that's not how one behaves with this community. And so I think those are the reasons, right, Francesco? Getting back to your question, like how it became a welcoming and how we keep it becoming a welcoming, how we keep it a welcoming community is, the company culture is a reflection of the community, or vice versa. Community culture is a reflection of the company culture, and as the community starts growing and hits critical mass, the preservation of that culture, the friendliness, the welcomingness, is self-reinforcing.
Yes, I totally agree, Scott. And again, we're trying to basically making this in simple terms, but this is like day-to-day work, we can say, from all the people who are moderating the community, taking care of the new people, and then those people will teach to the new people.
That's right. That's exactly
So
right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's exactly because if you feel welcomed and you feel valued and you're listened to, you're going to lean in, right? And you're going to then contribute, and then you're going to reflect that same behavior to the next new person who comes along. You're absolutely right. It's a very much a domino effect or an amplifier effect that's very authentic and very true.
nice. Thank you so much, Scott. And don't worry, because I already talk a lot in this channel, so it's great to to also let you speak. No worries. Yes. So now I'd like to. Okay. So now we talked about the community, what you all did, all the different levels, the community leaders, the Docker captains. I think also people moderating the Slack channels on Twitter. So there are many things, many steps, but. Now I'd like to talk about the new members. So how do you think that I can be? Like ideally, let's say that I am new to Docker, and let's say that I'm new to any community. So what do you think that makes a community member a good community member or a bad community member from your point of view?
Yeah, it's a deep question, Francesco, because there's no single archetype of community, right? Docker's learned. There's been some fantastic communities out there that we've learned a lot from, right? So, shout out to the Google community and the GitHub community and Twilio and Stack Overflow. There's fantastic developer communities out there that we've gone to school on, right? We've learned like what makes those vibrant and active. And there's other communities out there that perhaps are more vertical or more centralized on a particular topic, and they have a different ethos, right? And so I don't think there's kind of one single archetype. I will say for ours and for some of the ones that I mentioned that are welcoming, that are interested in bringing newcomers on board and helping people contribute in a very kind of friendly, back and forth, egalitarian manner, right? The important thing is to show up and be willing to teach and be willing to learn, right? So when you show up, if you have an idea for a thing, even if it's crazy, right, be willing to put that out there. Be willing to be vulnerable, put that out there. And also then in reverse, others have ideas, others have perhaps an optimized way of doing an approach. Be willing to learn that, right? And be willing to kind of show that you can give and you can take. And I think that balance between give and take is really important in joining a community like ours, because if it's just take, communities die, right? And it can't yet be all the time just people talking at each other, right? It can't just be a one-way street. And so the give and take, that two-way street, for our community at least, is something that I find really critical. And you see, the reason that, honestly, going back to previous thread, the reason the Docker captains, the Docker community leaders, you yourself, like the reason that you've risen in the community is it's very meritocratic, right? It's like you're giving, you're taking, and others see that value. And the more that you've given back, the more the captains have given back, the more the Docker community leaders have given back, like the more their visibility, the more their impact, the more people seek them out and want to listen to them and want to contribute to their section of the community, their part of the community. And so that's often lost, right? Because often, we're all busy working, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And so often it's like, hey, I just got to get in and answer this question. And that's okay. Like sometimes that's, you just need to answer the question so you can unblock your thing, right? But realize that to have a vibrant community, that needs to be paid back, right? So you have an answer to your thing. Okay, can you go back in when you have less pressure and contribute something back? And so it sounds really simple, Francesco, but maybe you'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, that that sometimes that ethos of give and take is lost sometimes on newcomers.
Yes, in Latin it's called do ut des. Like I give, so you give back.
Mhm.
Do
Yeah,
is I give, ut des, so you
yeah,
give to me. So do ut des.
yeah. That's right.
Um, yes. So yeah, no. Now I'm missing something because I've never been in an in-person event of Docker. So this is the only thing that it's missing for me, because we made some Docker all hands. So you can also
Okay.
explain what they are. I made some host some live events, some talks, but how do you think that these like events, and like which are the events that are related to Docker? Because I think the events are related to the whole community. So what about the events online and
Yeah.
maybe in person?
Well, and again, I want to give credit and shout out again to the Docker DevRel community team, because they are the producers of these, and they are very strong events, Francesco. I thank you for acknowledging that. Um, so I can say this as an introvert, right? I'm an introvert, and it's really odd, right? Introverts, the joke is like you'd rather type on your computer than talk to people. But at the end of the day, humans are social creatures, right? Like out of millions of years of evolution, you cannot take that out of our gene pool that we're social creatures. And so events are important, right? To establish that or reestablish those social connections, to learn from each other. And there's an energy when people are in the same space where they can riff off each other quickly. They can iterate with ideas. They can grab a pen and go on a whiteboard. And so all this is to say that we do see events as critical to the mix of supporting the community and nurturing the community. So go back in time a little bit. Previous to our focusing on, and previous to COVID, really, we had once a year in-person DockerCon events that at their peak had 5,000 participants live in auditoriums and cities around the world. We held them in both North America as well as Europe to make sure we had as wide a patch or wide a reach as possible. And those were fantastic events because we had talks from partners and customers, customer stories, obviously product announcements from Docker, but then very intentional hallway tracks and breakouts and opportunities for community members to gather and trade stories and roll up their sleeves and dig into a project. We'd celebrate community members at those events and recognize their contributions and recognize all the cool things they were doing with Docker and for other community members. COVID hit, as we know, and we went to virtual DockerCon, which again was really encouraging because it was virtual and thus accessible to everyone around the world. We had 80,000 participants in each of the 3-year virtual DockerCon, 80,000 from around the world, right? 24/7 people waking up at 2 a.m., 1 a.m. to participate in DockerCon. And as part of that, we intentionally again had community contributions for the tracks, but then we also had breakout tracks, Francesco, in the different languages, right? So we had a France room and we had a Mandarin room and a Japanese room, right? And so it was I think a good experiment to run of helping community members who are not native English speakers meet other community members in their language, right? And go back and forth and ideate on ideas and answers to questions and riff on their favorite, Docker awesome compose or their favorite hack. And so that proved to be really useful as well. Now, virtual Zoom rooms is not the same as face-to-face, but it still gave a sense of community that, hey, we're here together solving this problem, or we're here together getting up to speed on Docker, because we also had rooms for long-time Docker users and rooms for first-time Docker users, right? And both those allowed kind of a subset that identified with their duration of Docker to get together and trade notes. Then I want to recognize our team, the DevRel team, came up with community all hands. And so because we realized the energy of DockerCon was so special that we didn't want to just restrain it to once a year. And so we came up with community all hands. They came up with community all hands, where every quarter, every 90 days, we did a skinny down version of DockerCon. But again, it had community contributions to the content. It had breakout rooms where community members could gather. And and that resulted in, of course, evergreen content that's up on YouTube and in our blog that community members can continue to learn from, continue to grow and share with each other. So now with that kind of as history, with COVID waning, we are looking forward to getting back to live events, Francesco, because humans are human, right? And the social nature of us as creatures is important. And but we don't want to lose the ability to reach out to 80,000 people around the world either, because it just made it more accessible to a wider range of people, students and folks, far overseas, where traveling for 2 days for a 2-day conference just didn't make sense. So watch this space. I'm not going to pre-announce here, but watch this space, and you'll see events from us this year that combine both the live kind of on-prem, but don't lose that wonderful kind of hybrid reach of virtual events either. So I'll pause there, Francesco.
Nice.
Happy to go further on any of that.
Nice. So first of all, a couple of things, because before, first of all, I like it when people say like before pandemic, after pandemic. So it seems like year zero. Like we always say this, like before and after, and before. But I don't know if I should be sad or happy, because before pandemic I had like no time to dedicate to social media, so probably will not be here now. So this for probably something necessary, at least for many people, like to start a YouTube channel, start to be more active on social media. I would like to say thank you also for inviting me to participating to this sort of all hands, because I became a Docker captain, I think it was June 2021, and then on September I already made all hands. So it was great for me, we can say. So this is something cool. Yeah, of course. And yes, so amazing, Scott. It's really amazing to have you here. And now I would like to ask you Devil's advocate question. Like, okay, so let's say that I'm a developer. I am developing my stuff. I'm learning my stuff. Maybe I'm doing a couple of Docker courses. But is it really worth joining a community or not? Can I just, code by myself? So how would you reply to me if I say you something like that?
Yeah. I think it goes back to, or it's related to a previous thread, right? Which is, there's so many smart people, so many creative people, so many innovative people in the world. And if you have that awareness and I'll say humility to avail yourself to that, then a community is a fantastic environment, right? Where you can come in with an idea, you can riff back and forth, you can give and you can take. And I would assert that joining a community and being part of a community where you can do that riffing is a way in which you can reach your dreams faster, right? Develop your application faster, solve whatever tough, whether it's a bug or an architecture issue, like you can solve your issue faster. And in doing so, you can help others make progress as well. And so I would assert, Francesco, that as individuals, but also as groups and teams and communities, we can move faster when we're together, when we're sharing and working together, than we can if we're on our own. And so, yeah, if I'm a developer just getting started, if you're a developer just getting started, certainly it's a balance. You need some time to kind of focus and kind of learn and come up your own to speed. But I think it's a balance, that and then opening yourself up to the community and both listening and contributing to that community is a way to accelerate your career, accelerate your skills, accelerate your impact in your world and in what apps you're building.
Yeah, and of course I totally agree. That was a Devil's advocate question, but
Okay.
yes, of
That's
course,
just
of course.
an easy layup.
Yes, just it's easier to make questions like that. And also I don't know if you know that before joining tech, I was a volleyball coach, so I was like working in team. I've been working in teams way before coding, getting my hands dirty with JavaScript. So I think it's very important that you said this can accelerate. So because I think we are in a period where basically we never have time. When we are kids, we don't have time. When we are retired, we don't have time. Not even talking when like in the middle. So so yes. So having a place where we can share ideas, share our knowledge, because
That's right.
I think it's also, I think it's also a great way, for example, to fix our ideas on stuff. Let's say, for example, I've been a teacher for all my life, for example, when I started, let's say, teaching Docker, like in live streams, for example, it was not the same as like doing this by myself, because when you may think that you know something, but once you have, I don't know, some people are, let's say, very beginners, and you have to get in their shoes, it's
Right.
not that easy, especially if you're an expert. I don't know if
That's
you
right.
get me. So, like, let's say if you know many concepts, so many things for you are granted. But the concept of building a community is also that you are trying, I don't know, like to basically help someone who is new. And sometimes this cannot be that easy, because sometimes, I don't know, beginners make some questions like very basics that maybe it's not that easy to answer, because maybe, I don't know, you have been done this, I don't know, let's say 10 years ago. Say, okay, for you it's like that. Now it's not that works. And yes, so yes,
Well, I think it's important, right? Is that um, oftentimes that can be a fantastic source of creativity, right? The learner's mindset, because you're right, like 10 years of experience, you race ahead, and so you're at a point that is very far away from a beginner, but having to go back and walk in a beginner's shoes. I think you said it very well, Francisco. Walk in a beginner's shoes can give you a new lens to, like, oh, how could we make this easier, or how could we make this more powerful, or how could we maybe approach this a different way that would be conceptually more understandable for this group over here, right? I mean, we're fortunate that Docker has over 14 million registered developers, but they tend to be kind of back end hardcore server side developers. And we know there's universes of front enders out there. There's AIML data scientists out there. There's IoT, and they want to focus on their applications. They don't want to become Docker experts, and that's okay, right? And so how do you recognize these other segments of developers that want to accomplish their tasks, that they want to build their applications without having become Dockerfile Compose or Dockerfile experts, or Docker Compose YAML file experts, or Docker command line experts? They shouldn't have to, right? They should still be able to succeed. And so I like what you're saying, which is going back to first principles and a learner mindset from these different points of view can lead us towards solutions that make it easier for them to adopt and be successful. It's a fantastic perspective.
Yes, but let me tell you that this is one of the good things of Docker. That you can learn is a different level. If you can make this a profession, you can become a content creator of Docker content, or you can just, as you said, like maybe I am focused on something else, but I always recommend whatever is the technology that you want to focus, that you should focus on. I think that the learning the containerization basics is one of the most important things. When I'm also focused now, I don't know if you're following, but for example, now I'm, I don't know, containerizing an application in different languages every week. I started with JavaScript, then Python, and tomorrow I have a Go application. So I'm trying to do something serious about this, like so Docker in different languages, which is maybe for a Go. Let's say there is a Go programmer, Go developer, and they want to know some basics just to understand how they can create a simple application. And they know Go way more than me, because they coded in that language for more years. But that's absolutely okay. So we have Philippe Cruz in the chat. We made a live stream together. I don't know if you know that, but we made this. I think it was more than 1 year ago. So I should check some of these, of course. And of course, today it's Friday. The famous like don't deploy today, so we can also make this joke today. And yes, of course, nice.
Wait,
so
your point, maybe just drawing your point further, right? This is another fantastic, I say, property or attribute of a working community, in that the community will take the technology to places where the sponsoring company might never have envisioned, right? Because the community does have a lot of intelligent, creative people that are scratching itches that the company doesn't always see. So your example, like, hey, let's go through all the different language stacks and containerize that. We've seen people containerize their entire desktop environments. Docker is, generally speaking, a server-side deployment tool. We've seen them Dockerize all their tools on their laptop. We've seen fantastic IoT innovation where developers are shipping very small containers to home set-top boxes. You see the Boston Robotics Spot the dog robot, like that's programmed with Docker. Like the community is just very, very creative, and then I think coupled with a product architecture that allows community members to contribute at their own rate with their own ideas and a friendly community, that unlocking that innovation is another fantastic property, or I'll say benefit of a community, and joining that community to see all these great things going on that you might not otherwise be aware of.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And yes, I also the fact that it can be used on different architectures, for example. For example, this is something that maybe a beginner they don't have, like, let's say, a clear idea. But for example, I don't know, when you use an M1, M2, they are two different architectures. They are ARM architectures. My PC is with a different architecture. So having I think a way of creating something which is agnostic between architectures,
Right.
it's mind-blowing. Let's say even operating system, it's already mind-blowing, but over architectures is something that it's absolutely not easy, and we can't give it for granted. So it's good. It's good to have.
Well, I think it simplifies, right, and it allows, again, other communities to, adjacent communities or other groups that might not otherwise participate. So you said it. So the Docker runs on M1, M2, right, ARM architectures. It runs on x86, of course. It also runs on MIPS, RISC-V, and believe it or not, going all the way back to the top of our thread, Francesco, Docker runs on mainframes as well. That's IBM 390s, right? So,
okay.
But to your point, like that same containerization can be run on all those architectures we just discussed without the developer of the Docker file, the developer of the container, having to be an expert about IBM 390s or RISC-V or M1, M2. They don't have to have that knowledge, right? They just build their container image with the Docker file, and Docker build does the right thing. So it's pretty fun and I'll say pretty fun and innovative to kind of realize that power. Sorry, you're smiling.
Yes. No. Yes. So I didn't know that Docker runs on mainframes, and I think we just saved hundreds of HSN migraines. I think we solved some medicines budget there.
That's all right.
Yes, of course, registry. I'm going through some basic concepts, so if you want to stay up to date about Docker, you can keep following this channel, because this is one of the things that I always wanted to teach every day, do live streams. I will probably also release some more videos in the future. So it's for sure it's a fascinating technology, and what is something that I really like about Docker, of course, about the community, is the fact that it can be connected with different technologies. So it's the best tool to create a community, because, for example, now I'm connecting with different developers who use different language. So even from my perspective, my own selfish perspective, I want to be connected with many developers, but usually it's not easy to connect with developers. So maybe they're interested into creating their own applications, but through Docker, I can communicate with them because we found something to talk about. So it's a powerful tool, even from the pure community content creator perspective, just because I can always I made, for example, some collaborations with Patrick Lauber, some Python developers, some other developers, because I did, for example, the Docker part. So it's probably one of the best tools, also, I don't know, like to engage with other people as a community tool. So maybe this was not the first use case for Docker, but
no,
yes.
I think that's right, Francesco. Right, and it goes back to your previous point that the common format, right, of the Docker container and the ease with which it can be distributed and shared makes it accessible, right, to other communities and new communities. You saw this, maybe just two examples. We see this on Docker Hub, which has like over 15 million applications being shared through Docker Hub, downloaded about 16 billion times a month, right? And to your point, like, because it's straightforward to put them inside the Docker container and abstract out difference between languages as well as infrastructure, right? That makes it easy to build those images and share them. The second thing, somewhat related, is when COVID hit, we saw overnight 600-700 projects spin up and share the results of COVID tracking tools and analytics tools and COVID results, test results processing tools, all shared through container images on Docker Hub. So it allowed rapid response to a global crisis. And because the format was kind of universal and standardized, you didn't have to worry about, well, is that person downloading to a Linux laptop or a Mac laptop, or they're running that on a server in the cloud? Didn't matter, right? They could just create these tools to track the virus, or to assess test results, or to map out the spread of it, and just that allowed the community to help each other and help the world really very, very rapidly. So I think there's something to that. The powerful abstractions can unlock and unleash so much innovation from so many different parts of the community.
Yes, absolutely. And so going back on the useful stuff, I had the honor to interview the Dr. Chris Miller in the last Docker All Hands, or it was Docker, not All Hands, it was.
Right.
And that's mind blowing, because of course he's not like an expert on the DevOps part, but maybe he is like more focused on the doing something useful with that. So cancer cell genome, helping patients, and that's I think it's where the technology can be really useful for something.
Well, and that's another great example of the power of communities and efficiently sharing with communities, right? So the folks who are watching, the use case that Francesco is citing is Washington St. Louis University Washington Lee University in St. Louis. The Cancer Research Center shares their cancer model results in Docker containers through Hub with other research communities. And so it allows very rapid sharing back and forth with the cancer research scientists, heavy use of analytics and data on that. And because going back again to the common thread you're hearing here, going back to because the format is widely adopted and easy to use, right? Research scientists can share with each other without becoming specialists at Linux kernels, without becoming specialists at copy on write file systems. Snap, put it in a container, share it, go, right? And just the rapidity with which they're able to iterate and zero in on cancer solutions is fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that, Francesco. That's fantastic interview.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interview Dr. Chris Miller. And yes, and I think that I think a technology is great when it's really accessible, because we can have a great technology, but if 4 people just can use them after using that, after being expert for 10 years, we failed, because this is something that those people, they can get sick and then the technology is over. Instead, when we have something easy to use that can help you to focus on other problems, because we always have a problem, sadly. But maybe we want to focus on other problems and not focusing also on trying to spin up the right Linux. I don't know. A doctor doesn't want to have those. Maybe for a software engineer, it might also be, fascinating, because we are a bit nerds. We like maybe to understand things. But for a person who is out of the tech world, it's not really important. It's like I don't care. I don't know the kind of dress of it, because it's not what I'm focused on. And so this technology helps people who are not experts.
That's
in technology.
That's right. Not experts. It's accessible to non-experts, data scientists, the cancer researcher scientists that you mentioned. It's powerful tech that's accessible to them and helps them go faster in their jobs, right? And they're not becoming specialists on the command line. They remain specialists at cancer research in this case. So
absolutely,
yeah, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. We want them to stay focused on cancer research.
Absolutely. Scott, thank you so much. We have been going for almost 1 hour. It's really incredible. And yes, so maybe we have 2 fast questions and then we wrap up. So Tobilob is asking the state of Docker in 2023.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we are doubling down on helping developers be productive and build safe applications, full stop. And what we're seeing is because developers using Docker Engine or Docker Desktop, which has Docker Engine, that we can help them get insight in terms of what's inside that container image, in terms of whether there's a vulnerability or maybe the secrets accidentally got built into that, and give them a out of the box kind of guided experience, so that they don't keep building that image and then move it on down the line. So how to help developers be even more productive in producing safe apps is a big focus of ours this year. And then the other, which you've seen us start to talk about last year, will continue this year, is Docker started with Linux containers, right? And then we brought that to Windows containers. You're now seeing it on serverless. So Amazon Lambda, about 25% of Amazon Lambdas are delivered as a Docker container. And then you saw us announce WASM, WebAssembly support for Docker support for WebAssembly last October. And you'll see us continue to do that. And so the point is that developers have adopted Docker. The format, as we've just spent some time talking, the format is widely adopted in registries and runtimes and tooling. And so we want to continue to allow and help developers take advantage of those tools, processes, skills that they've developed by applying it to different artifacts, different application types. So Linux containers, Windows containers, serverless, WASM, right? There's going to be more and more, obviously, as the industry keeps innovating and keeps rushing ahead. So look for Docker to help this year focus on giving developers power to be even more productive, building safe apps. And those apps are not going to be only Linux containers, but there's a whole range of technologies that are coming that Docker is going to be embracing and helping you as a developer be effective with.
Yeah, and I can say that even if I've been studying Docker for many years, I'm always surprised by the adaptability of the technology itself, because the world is evolving fast, but Docker is adapting over time on the different technology. One example, for example, is the M1 and 2. So rapidly Docker can adapt to the so fast evolving technology, and this is fascinating. And because many technologies they can't keep the pace, instead Docker is managing the pace with the evolution of the technology, the architecture, the frameworks, the structures. So this is it's really, I don't know, we will see, but it's great. It's going very well so far. We have one which is a little bit more technical about Build X, which is super powerful. Of course, we can maybe talk about that, but do you want to share some thoughts?
So BuildX, shout out to Tonus and the whole BuildX team, the fantastic group, and I say the community energy around Docker build and BuildKit and BuildX is fantastic. So thank you all community members who are already participating in that community. There's a very active Slack channel in our community Slack around Build, and so this is. Hopefully you're hearing consistency in what we're talking about here today with Francesco, that all the different switches and requirements for different architectures can be overwhelming for developers. And so the mission of our build team, BuildX, is with a single build command, the ability to create containers that can run on multiple architectures. So you can use BuildX with a single Docker file and then produce a Docker image that'll run on ARM, Docker image that'll run on x86, a Docker image that'll run on MIPS, right? With one command, one tool. And that power, again, allows the developer to focus on their app and not have to worry about the different architecture specifics in the build process. And you're going to see even more and more power come to BuildKit and BuildX, where it's a pluggable architecture. You're probably familiar with the questioner, that you can have pluggable backends, meaning the target architectures that BuildKit results in, and you can have pluggable front ends, meaning BuildKit, of course, starts or defaults to Dockerfile, but BuildKit is also programmable. So if you want to have BuildKit as part of your tooling that automatically generates an image without going through the Dockerfile process, the front end, the pluggable front end of BuildKit allows that as well. So it's an incredibly powerful tech. And actually, one more thing, since we're on it, is because BuildKit is built into the Docker desktop workflow when you're building your images locally, we're able to index what's going into the build, automatically create an SBOM, software bill of materials, automatically attach that SBOM to the image as it goes through its journey. And what that'll do for developers is give them fantastic insight in terms of what really is in that image, what packages, what base images, and give them understanding of like, okay, is everything healthy inside that image, or maybe it's not as healthy as I thought, and what steps can I do to bring it back to health? So thank you for the question. Powerful tech. If you're interested, the community is a fantastic community over in our channel, and we're bringing more and more of that power, simplifying it for Docker desktop users. We've already done that, but look for more to come this year as well.
Perfect. So, Scott, thank you so much. You're also super prepared, also on the technical part. This is a huge shout out of you because as a CEO, maybe we know that you have many problems to take care of, but you still can go deep like on this such technical parts. So it's great. It's great. So it's absolutely nice. Okay, Scott, we have close to 1 hour. I don't want to steal more time from you. I also think it's early on your side. I think it's 7:30 a.m. I see that you're an early bird too. And yes, thank you so much. Also, thank you for this Mobi. I won this because I made I know that you're super prepared. I can't compete with you. I know. I'm not even trying. I can't even try. I know. I can't.
I got a whole closet of this stuff.
But yes. So thank you, Scott. Would you like to say something before we close to the developers that basically mostly the beginners, how they maybe engage with the community, the Docker community, and then we can close this episode.
Well, let me thank you, Francesco, for the opportunity to discuss and share our journeys on the show with this community, with your community, which I know overlaps the Docker community. Let me thank the Docker community that's here on this stream. Docker wouldn't be Docker without you. And so you are core to the Docker experience. When we think about what the Docker experience is at the company, we don't think it's just the product, it's just the tech. We think it's the product, the tech, the community, the users. Like this is part of how part of how the world experiences Docker, and you're critical to that. And I'll just say one final thing that developers, you're creating the future. And if you just think how exciting that is, like there's no other industry where we can move as fast and has as significant an impact as we can as developers. And so I just hope you're as inspired by that as we are at Docker. We get up every morning wanting to serve you and give you tools to help you create that future. And if you're excited by that and excited by what we're doing, just if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to join our community and jump in. The water is warm, very welcoming, and would love to have you participate and just join us on this journey.
Nice. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you so much for your kind words. Scott is is an amazing CEO, of course. Scott, thank you so much. I hope that we kickstarted your day in the right way. Yes, I hope to meet you again one day. I don't know. I'll be in the US next week, but I'll be in Denver. So I'll be in Denver and then in Atlanta this year. So I'm coming back to US in different cities, and at some point we will meet. We'll
connect this year sometime, Francesco, for sure.
We'll do. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, of course, also to all the people here in the channel. We will be back in next week also with these episodes. And yes, thank you so much, Scott.
Fantastic. Again, and of course, thanks, Francesco. Thank you, community. Be well. Have a good Friday.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.